Hello and welcome, everybody. This is What Was That? But we are also simulcasting with Truth Seekers, and we want to welcome Truth Seekers audience to the show. And we're about to bring up their host, Stephen Cambian. Stephen Cambian it streams all throughout the week, bringing up to date information on UFO and supernatural and some paranormal topics. But he brings a very grounded perspective, as many of you know. Let's bring him up here. Welcome the guest, everybody. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, welcome, guys.
Steven.
Thanks for doing this. This is interesting. So we're just so everybody's aware, we're streaming on 3 channels at once. That's
Hey,
pretty interesting.
And just last night, you simulcasted your first time on terrestrial radio. Was that correct?
Yeah, that was wild. Yeah, I didn't know that guy's on so many radio stations. It's a lot of like small town, small radio stations, but he's got this huge network of them. I think over 100.
Oh, wow.
So we were all over the continental United States, and I love that. Like just a voice
Cool.
in the wind, I love that.
Yeah, I know you've been heavily inspired by like Art Bell and other great radio hosts. That had to be something to get on the waves,
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
Stephen,
it was cool.
If you would have asked me 6 months ago what I knew about Bob Lazar, I would have told you that he was an MIT graduate. He worked at Caltech. He got recruited by the government to work in Area 51, particularly S4 on propulsion systems. He showed his friends test flights. What was some of the other stuff that he did during that story? Oh, he then almost got ran off the road by the government when he was a whistleblower. How much of this is true?
I believe none of it is true. And, the Bob Lazar story works by the lie by omission, and just to be clear, the people that have made millions of dollars selling Bob's story are all aware of all the information that I share with my audience, but they choose to not discuss it, to ignore it, to explain it away. Bob Lazar's education, first of all, is completely and totally fake. He graduated in the bottom third of his class in high school, which means he never could have got into either Caltech or MIT. And during a court case where he was arrested for running a prostitution house, a house of prostitution illegally, he said that his undergraduate degree was from Pacifica University, which was this fly-by-night company back in the day where if you wanted a degree to hang on your wall and fool your stupid friends, you just gave them a few $100s and they would give you a degree in anything you wanted. So, and I talked in great length to the admissions people at both MIT and Caltech. They check with your schooling. They would never have allowed him into those prestigious universities with a bought undergraduate degree. And further proof is that he never, ever could have gotten a degree. And I think he called it electronics technology at Caltech at the time, a master's degree in that, because they didn't offer that as a master's program at the time. Oh, wow. These are little details, but if he's saying he got a degree in electronics technology and you go check with Caltech and they say, we didn't have a master's program in that at that time.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
It didn't exist. And further, people do the Men in Black explanation. Oh, they erased his records. But Stan Friedman talked to legal counsels of both schools and both explained to him, we would get sued out the wazoo if we just wouldn't acknowledge somebody, getting a degree from us under government pressure or otherwise. And then the Men in Black explanation falls apart because Michael Schratt and a few other researchers I'm aware of, they got all of the yearbooks for like a 7 or 8 year period that Bob would have been at either school, scoured the yearbooks. There's no mention of Bob Lazar. So if we do believe the government erased his records, the Men in Black explanation, then that would mean that the Men in Black would have had to went to everybody's dusty garage, attic, basement, and steal out the yearbooks, sanitize them of any mention of Bob Lazar, and then sneak back in everybody's houses and put them back. It is just a ridiculous explanation. And I will say, like, George Knapp all but admits or concedes that Bob just made up his education, but Corbell never really addresses it, just choosing to say things like, well, haven't you ever lied to get a girl or a job? But if the entire story of his begins with, I'm a physicist, and it does, his story begins with, I'm a scientist. And we can clearly establish that his so-called scientific degrees are all fake. the whole seed in which the story begins is completely and totally factually fake. So why would I care to listen to him tell fantastical fairy tales about, alien technology if he can't even tell us the truth about the fact that he's not a real scientist?
Yeah.
And by the way, just to be clear, I have a background in computer science, but never finished the degree. So this is not to say that somebody can't work in the science fields without a degree, because especially in computer science and programming, yes, you can. You got to be a good coder. They don't care what pieces of paper you have. I worked at Drexel Robotics Lab for a very well-known professor, and I had no degree, but he knew that. My skills were necessary, and no one that he interviewed with the degree had the skills necessary to do the jobs that he needed done, which was all Linux-based servers and things like that for his lab. So, it very well could be that he could get hired in the science field. But what we know is that he also lied about working at Los Alamos. He didn't lie about working there, but he lied about being a scientist there. He was a low-level technician. Kirk Meyer they hired subcontractors for the lab to do things like janitorial services.
I was gonna say, like, replacing keyboards.
Yeah, maintenance people and electronics technicians. If your keyboard breaks, you spill coffee on your mouse, whatever happens, you call Bob and he'll come and fix that for you. But there's a huge difference between an electronics technician that does things like that and somebody that is what he claimed to be, which was a senior staff level physicist. A senior staff level physicist would be in charge of hundreds of people and multiple projects,
people would
and
know
multiple
him.
labs. People would know him. People would be able to corroborate his story. So what we really have is a convicted pimp, fake scientist that said that he worked on alien technology. And I just don't buy it anymore. And there's more. There's just so much more. We get into,
I was going to ask, how did the UFO? How did the story come together? What made him pick this?
Well,
story?
I can only speculate based on everything that I know. And one thing that we know for an absolute fact, based on John Lear's statements, is that Gene Huff, who would become Bob Lazar's business partner, and Bob Lazar went to went to John Lear's house, and John Lear had all of this stuff about UFOs, and he had a photocopy machine, and he had a videotape copier, and he had all these VHS tapes. So Gene Huff made a deal with John Lear. I'll do a real estate appraisal on your house, and in exchange, I want you to copy all your UFO stuff and give me copies of all these documents you have and this stuff. So that's what happened. And the most interesting thing to me, one of the most interesting things about that exchange is that John Lear specifically mentions that he gave them all the Billy Meyer material. And so Gene Huff and Bob Lazar get the Billy Meyer material and all this UFO tapes and stuff, and they go and I suppose watch them together. And just a few months later, suddenly Bob Lazar is working on spacecraft that look exactly the same as Billy Meyer's beam ships in the material he was just given a few months previous.
Yeah, the old sports coupe.
So
John Lear is quite a figure in the ufology. How did Bob Lazar and John Lear ever link up? Was that through Gene Huff then?
Yeah. Gene Huff was a real estate appraisal person and somehow knew John Lear. And the strange story is that, remember, Bob Lazar claimed to be a senior staff level physicist, highly educated scientist, and somehow he's hanging out with the real estate appraisal guy holding the measuring tape for him, while he does a real estate appraisal. It just doesn't make sense. Just as the fact that, I know a lot of scientists and they're pretty serious people. They care a lot about their reputations. They don't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'll start a whorehouse. It just doesn't happen. And
now, is he not making money off of this whole thing? Bob Lazar himself, he's not making money off the UFO thing, but everybody.
Well, that's another fallacy pushed by supporters and people like Jeremy Corbell, because from the very moment that Bob Lazar came out with his story, he tried to cash in. He had a videotape called, I think it was called like Flying Saucers in the Government Bible. It's been a while.
I think I rented that in a giant eagle in northern Cambion, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and so he him and Gene Huff had this whole business plan, and they had that tape out and advertised in the back of science magazines very shortly after Bob Lazar came out. And I know a little bit about how they edited and put that video together. They did it on something called an Amiga with a video toaster. It was a old way of doing, video before digital really hit. And I can look at that and tell you that it took a while to produce that tape. So the fact that they had it out so shortly after Bob Lazar became public is suspicious to me. It would probably mean that they made the tape first and then Bob came out. So they sold it in the back of science magazines for $29.95 plus $3.95 shipping. I still remember that because I was, I had to get my father to give me a check and send it off. I think I bought it from the back of like Popular Science or Popular Mechanics or something like that. And then, the other thing is that he got a very lucrative deal with Testors Model Corporation, where he got a huge upfront advance, and then they gave him royalties for every model sold. And there was a time in the early 90s where if you went into any toy shop, hobby shop, anything like that, train stores that also sold models, I've seen it in, those models were everywhere.
Yeah.
His flying saucer models. So he got a big upfront payment for agreeing to that deal, and then he got a piece of every model they sold. I spoke with the Rust-Oleum Corporation, who owns Testors, and they told me that they sold millions of those models. So, even if you got a quarter or a dime from every, it adds up.
Yeah,
when you're
made
talking
a lot of money off that.
And then recently there was an anniversary in which it's reported that he got paid $25,000 for 1 2-hour, talk with George Knapp.
I can see that. Yeah.
Oh no.
So, and then there was a 6-figure deal with the book deal from or more. I'm told, it's hard to tell, but Bob Lazar got a big money deal from TTSA, and they try to hide that they were the ones publishing his book. We were one of the people that first reported that. I caught there was a brand new publishing company that came out of nowhere that's suddenly publishing Bob Lazar's book, and they had a website. And so I checked the registration data, and I found that it was Tom DeLonge's sister who registered the website.
No
wow.
way.
Yeah, so they try to sort of hide that they were the ones that were publishing the book. I guess it's controversial, but they still wanted to do it and still wanted to make money. And interestingly, shortly after Bob Lazar got that book deal, he moved somewhere and bought a $500,000 property. Now, I don't know if he got a mortgage or he put so much down or so, but we can look at that situation and speculate like he must have got a pretty good chunk of money if he's buying a $500,000 property with all these outbuildings for his business shortly after the book deal. And it's also interesting on the book that John Lear, in his Facebook posts before he died, they're still out there, he swore up and down that Bob Lazar did not write that book. It must have been written by a ghostwriter because there was too many details that were missing or wrong. So
now, why is that? Because is it true that John Lear told a story from an anonymous source years prior to Bob Lazar that fitted his story?
Yes.
Sort of same
yeah,
thing?
there was a Sunday morning sort of talk show that George Knapp did. I'm not sure if it was KLAS or something else back then, but he did this talk show, and George Knapp did one show on UFOs. He's on record saying this. He did one show on UFOs, and the ratings were so through the roof that the station was like, you have to do more shows on UFOs. And John Lear, I think 6 months or maybe a year max before Bob Lazar came out with his story, John Lear told a very similar story, yes, from an anonymous source, that there was a sub base on Area 51, and they
that's
had
where that comes from.
I think he said they had 12, or he might have even said 9, like Bob said. They had 9 intact flying saucer craft in these hangars and all of these things. And then suddenly, a short time later, Bob Lazar meets him and suddenly is working at the same exact place that John Lear had described to George Knapp on his show previously. It's like, I think that, and there's a lot of speculation that these 3 guys, including Lear, Gene Huff, and Bob Lazar, all concocted this thing together to make money, but it's hard to establish, that as factual.
And Tom DeLonge got in on it.
That's what I'm saying. It's all these independent people who are weaving a story together to
not cool.
kind of build this thing up.
Bullshitters.
Yeah.
Okay.
How did John Lear get into this whole UFO thing? But prior to that, he's an acclaimed, like he holds every FAA certification. And
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to him a few times on the phone, and the funny thing is like through a friend, he needed computer technical support. He needed a very certain version of a graphics editor that was like years old for some reason. Like he didn't like the new one; it wouldn't do what he used to do with it or something. So a friend of mine reached out to me that knew him well and said, Stephen, he really needs this version of this software, and I have a server full of software from over the years, so I lent him it. Let's just say that. So, and I did get to talk to him a few times short on the phone. And, he was an amazing guy. The guy like flew secret. He verifiably really did.
Yeah.
He flew secret missions for the CIA.
Yeah, he was like
And
Air America, right?
Yeah, and he flew like every kind of airplane and was certified to fly every kind of airplane that you could. And he had, for a time, he had speed records. For a time, he had altitude records. Very impressive guy. And apparently his father was well connected, too, with intelligence circles. And
yeah, I would imagine
I think
so.
he told me that's what got him down the rabbit holes, that his father was sort of on a peripheral interested in some of these topics. And he, but he kind of went all chips in on it. He went from being, John did what many people do, and you'll notice this. I call it UFO disease. When they first start out, they're pretty grounded. They're like, hey, there's these sightings, there may be alien visitation, it's unexplainable. They're very grounded when people start, and so was John Lear. But the longer time went on, and he just believed everything. He starts talking about there's hundreds of thousands of people living on the moon.
Yeah, that's what I remember mostly.
Yeah,
from him was
and
the
he was fighting monsters during the Vietnam War. It wasn't Viet Cong. We were there to kill the monsters and all of this this bizarro stuff. And that Saturn and Venus were habitable, and they're lying to us, and Mars is habitable. There's all these people out there, hundreds of thousands of people. And yeah, he got pretty wild,
Yeah,
I
don't know if that was maybe him trying to get with that Richard Hoagland, who he's still around. But
he's still around. Yeah, he still does a show too, I believe.
Oh, really?
On Coast to Coast? Does he still go to Coast to Coast, Dan?
I don't think Coast to Coast. I think he has his own sort of podcast and website still, but he still never gave up on the face of Mars, which, I remember that story, and I desperately wanted to believe that was true.
Sure.
Because that would just change everything. Like, look, there was a civilization before us on another planet, like virtually right next to us. That is awesome.
Yeah, particularly like the layout, when they show that layout and they compare it to Gaza, I think, and it's like, oh wow, that's really similar.
It matches up.
It matches up like exactly.
Yeah, I think they did a lot of mental gymnastics to make the pieces fit.
Yeah, because if you really look, they're not. A couple of them aren't.
They're not quite right. Yeah. And there are Mars imagers, satellite imaging systems now, where you can get a super clear picture of that area. And what you see in regards to the pyramids is a natural structure and a lot of debris. It looks like, busted apart rocks. It doesn't look anything like it was depicted by Richard Hoagland and others with those theories, And part of me doesn't blame them for that. The imaging was poor back then. So, it might have. You might have filled in some blanks. Yeah, the face absolutely looked like a face.
You're like, wow.
But to create a whole story surrounding that picture is ridiculous.
And that's something that Graham Hancock even kind of ran away from. He wrote a book called, it was about the Mars. I can't remember what it was called, the Mars Mystery, or maybe the Red Mystery or something like that. But he kind of backed away from that.
Well, I have always thought that Mars is the most interesting planet.
Absolutely.
Besides our own, because it's the closest to our own, and certainly there are problems, but I believe I'm 100% sure that someday we will terraform Mars, and that'll be a whole interesting thing because the atmospheric pressure and the gravity is slightly different. So the humans that will live and evolve on a terraformed Mars will be different from us, and I don't know that you can live like what if you lived 50 years on Mars and then you went to Earth? Would you be okay, or would the gravity be too much for you? The atmospheric pressure is different. All these things, you might not be able to go back to Earth once you've lived there long enough.
Have you ever watched we're getting a little off topic, but you ever watched The Expanse? They kind of tackle some of that, where Martians can't move to Earth or they can't stay for long. And
yeah, good stuff. Yeah, but Mars is the most interesting planet to me besides Earth because it has the most potential to be a habitable planet.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't think that we can live long term in like habitats and fly oxygen over to other planets constantly and all these things. We have to learn to live off the land and the new planets and change them to be habitable. And you know, I think they're going to be doing experiments with Martian soil to see if they can grow crops and even trees and things like that in Martian soil. But most scientists that I've talked to agree that it absolutely should be possible to do that.
I know actually the trees that are very common around me is the long pine trees, and they are, I guess, working with genetically modifying it so that it can take to the soil or an atmosphere of Mars, because it's a very resilient tree. It will grow.
Oh yeah, well, see, there you go.
So like, I guess what they would describe would be a much shorter version of it. It wouldn't be as big, but just
and the other thing about terraforming Mars is that what it really needs is something that we're great at. It needs somebody to go there and put a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. Absolutely. And that's something that we are experts at. We could and there's been science fiction stories about aliens that breathe methane and they shoot these methane burners into the ground and they spew methane. We could do that with CO2 on the Martian surface. And there's something called the Mars Society, which is very interesting, and they're all about doing this terraforming project. And the lead scientist for that says like 2 or 3 generations, and it would be Earth-like planet if they do it
incredible.
Right. That's amazing.
That's really incredible. I've always thought that there would be a meeting where, like, instead of us wearing spacesuits to go to like Mars, that we would eventually just start genetically modifying ourselves, where our bodies would match as it's forming us, like we meet in the middle.
Yeah. But that's a possibility too with CRISPR technology and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the future is going to get scary real fast.
Oh, certainly. I know Sheila was very excited to hear about Bob Lazar's pimping history, which this blew my mind when I first heard about all this illegal brothel.
I was wondering, when did this happen? When was he caught for
this? It was shortly after. I don't remember the exact date, but it was shortly after he came out, maybe in 1990 or 91. I'd have to check the dates of the court documents. But what's most disturbing is that when they did the raid on his home, they found all these, or on the place, they found all these VHS tapes. So Bob Lazar was apparently, they were apparently taping all the Johns doing what they were doing with the prostitutes. And that's a whole can of worms. Like, why were you doing that?
To blackmail them later?
That's what
that's what a lot of people have said. And one thing also that is important to mention about Bob Lazar is that you can talk to anybody in intelligence circles and ask them this question. Say, what if somebody needed to be cleared to work on secret projects and they had recently declared bankruptcy and their wife was a convicted murderer with ties to organized crime? Would they be cleared to work on a secret project? And no, they wouldn't. Yeah. Bob Lazar's wife was a convicted at the time. She was a convicted murderer with strong ties to organized crime in the form of the Hells Angels. That's who she got involved with this murder with Hells Angels members.
Twice. So is this the first wife or is this the?
I think this is the first wife. Yeah, the older woman, and it's a tragic story. Bob Lazar is also a bigamist because he married a second woman while he was still married to the first wife, and then I don't know if it's because she found out about his affair or married another woman, but she killed herself like right after he married this other woman.
Is that a polygamist? Like, is that the same as a bigamist?
Polygamist? Polygamist, bigamist. Yeah, I have to look both of those up. Bigamist. Yeah,
like
he had 2 wives. Yeah, 2 wives at once.
Okay, and that's polygamy is like.
Yeah, well, I think it's multiple.
Okay.
So he had 2, and and the other thing that I found very strange is that right after his wife killed herself in that house, him and his new wife just moved in.
Wow.
Like that's a little bizarre. And Bob's been involved in a lot of financial weirdness and things like that. So, I never have believed that this guy was a scientist because every scientist that I've ever met or known has been very conservative, concerned with appearances, concerned with their reputation. You know, Bob's like running whorehouses, selling dangerous chemicals and doing all this stuff. It doesn't add up.
What's
And
crazy is you look at this guy, and I would never paint him as pimp, like illegal chemical sales,
He
and
looks like
like
a nerd. Totally.
yeah,
yeah,
he just looks like kind of a pocket protector guy nerd, you know.
yeah.
And
But
you know, it's interesting too that the other big prover for me is that there was a gentleman that was an Area 51 security guard, and we know that because he sued the government for those burn pits because he got sick over those burn pits while he was an Area 51 security guard. But he was there at the time in 1989, and he checked all the records as soon as Bob became public. You know, he checked all the Janet flight records. You know, in order to get on the flight, you have to register in order to
and
get
that's the
off the
flights that
flight.
leave Las Vegas to Area
Yes,
51.
and that's what Bob said, that he flew into Area 51
Yeah.
from the Janet Airlines. And so this Area 51 security guard checked. And then he also stated that besides the Janet flight logs of every passenger going on or off of a Janet airline, there's logs for that. There's also logs of anybody that steps foot on Area 51 checking in and checking out. So he checked those logs as well. No Bob Lazar. And both of those logs would require your real name. So they can't use any excuses. There was no Bob Lazar in the flight logs or in the check-in or check-out logs at Area 51. And I know people get pissy and they go, he didn't work at Area 51. He worked at S4, but he said he flew into Area 51 and then they bust him to this other S4. And then S4 is a complete and total, you know, fairy tale. There's been recent flyovers that show there's nothing there. Like there's just nothing
And
there.
there was a
There's
gentleman
rocks
who
and
hiked
dirt.
out there.
Yes,
Was
a gentleman
there?
hiked out there, didn't see any, you know, nothing that Bob Lazar described is at Papoose Lake. Bob Lazar described a road, a guard shack, oppressive military presence. None of that was there when this Jerry Freeman hiked right up to the mountain that Bob Lazar claimed was having hangars of alien spacecraft.
And I believe he took a selfie in front of it, and then people were saying, no, it's right behind his hat, and you can't see it.
Yeah,
the
right.
doors or something. It was some really weird excuse of wow, like no.
Yeah. People make excuses, but the other really good evidence that there could not be a base at Papoose Lake is that the radiation levels there are such that if you spend a significant amount of time there, you would be in trouble. You can't spend a significant amount of time there. So why would the government put a base in a place that if people spent, you know, a month working there, they'd get cancer?
Yeah.
They wouldn't do that. The liability issues alone would preclude them from doing that.
Especially
and
when
anybody
a ton of space everywhere else in this.
And anybody can check with the Atomic Energy Commission, and you can get the levels and see that and talk to a physicist that it's dangerous levels of radiation in that area. There's you know, so all points and most indicators point to Bob Lazar just concocting the story to make money, and you know, and others have said. He claimed he didn't make any money from that Jeremy Corbell documentary, but I think a very important question is, did anybody in his family get a check? Because his wife was also in the film. So,
I never heard that. He said he made no money off that documentary. Wow.
That's what he said, which is kind of hard to believe, but okay, you know.
Yeah.
But some people have suggested that the check might have went to his wife because she was also in the film. His current wife, who knows?
So
but
he's not technically lying if he said
yeah. And I might have arranged that so that he could say that, because one of the other things is that Corbell is constantly pushing. They even say it in the film, I don't make any money out of this. I never made any money out of this. Yes, you did. And it's a public record that you try to cash in.
I believe he sells T-shirts and stuff too.
Yeah, T-shirts, mugs, and drawings and posters. And then there's also there was a shady thing that happened. He got paid to go to Japan to take part in some television thing in Japan, and he kept the check and he never went. You know, this is just not a reputable man. He's running whorehouses. He's keeping checks and not fulfilling his obligation. You know, and by the way, I don't know if he ever refunded that. Somebody suggested that he did. I'd like to see the canceled checks. You know,
did he go to jail for his whorehouse conviction?
No, he got a sweetheart deal where he got probation. But the case is interesting because he perjured himself, claiming that he did have an MIT degree and he did have a Caltech degree in the court documents, and that's a form of perjury. But at the time, the judge was kind of like impressed that he had John Lear and George Knapp and other people writing letters to the judge saying, he's a good guy. We need to give him probation or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. Because the part that really blows my mind is that I never heard any of this until I found you a few months ago through Sheila. And it's like, why wasn't there one news reporter, one person anywhere that
or even a YouTuber would have been nice
in the last 20 years expose any last 30
Yeah,
years,
well, I think that there has been pieces and parts of this out there. Stan Friedman did an excellent job just destroying the guy's educational claims. And I knew Stan Friedman a little bit. I talked to him many times before he died. He was a guest on my show once. And he, sort of went to the mat. Like he flew to MIT to talk to people in person and verify this guy's claims. He flew to Caltech, like he talked to the admissions people, everybody. So there have been little pieces of this out there, but I'm always fond of saying that these stories that people are selling, and remember, Bob Lazar was not telling a story. He was selling the story. That's a very important distinction. But the people that are selling this story, primarily George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, they do the lie by omission. They're not going to tell you that an Area 51 security guard said he wasn't in the logs. They're not going to tell you the education's completely fake and there's no way it could have been erased. That's a garbage claim. They're not going to tell you that he lied about being a physicist at Los Alamos. They're not going to, tell you that he was bankrupt right before he claimed that he got top secret clearance.
And by the way,
it was the height of the Cold War. And at the height of the Cold War, there was a little paranoia going on about the Soviet Union spying. So they would never have given somebody with financial problems secret clearance to work on anything because that's a huge security risk.
Huge.
He could be bribed by the Russians very easily or whatever, So they leave all these things out, and that's how the story works. And if you ask them questions, they block you, or they don't want, or they just ignore you, But the problem is also a problem. I call it the bigger microphone syndrome, or the bigger bullhorn syndrome. The guy with the bigger bullhorn wins. Like George Knapp has a huge following. Jeremy Corbell has a huge following. I have a relatively small following in comparison to them. So it's sort of like you have trouble reaching people with the actual truth.
Yeah. It was like I was telling Sheila earlier today that I was kind of bouncing back through the old Joe Rogan interview that he did with Lazar. And Lazar mentioned that Matt Damon was in talks to play him for a film. And it never went through, and I'm assuming because the movie studio looked into this and saw that there wasn't really.
Well, it could be because of that, but I do know that a screenplay exists that Gene Huff wrote, and they were trying to get a big money deal with Hollywood for Bob Lazar's story for many years. I still think it's going to happen someday.
I think it should be about the true story of Bob. I would watch this pimp and illegal brothel. I think
that's actually a good idea, and on my list of possible films to make in the future. I'd really like to get into more filmmaking. I made a few documentaries, but they're kind of no budget. Forget about low budget; they were no budget, But this is one story that I'm intimately familiar with, and I too thought it would be funny because I would show Bob Lazar like doing coke and banging whores. And,
absolutely, yeah.
Like just how crazy it really was, because there's stories of that, and even George Knapp will tell you that one of Bob Lazar's favorite things was prostitutes. Like he loved hookers. That's what he loved. He loved guns, hookers, and science.
Like how great would? I'm sorry. What?
I know George Knapp is in Las Vegas, right? So is that how he knows? Does he hang out with like Bob Lazar at the whorehouse and stuff, or what?
Well, he was the Las Vegas television news reporter, and I think Bob was living at Las Vegas at the time. And interestingly, the reason that Bob Lazar got arrested is because of George Knapp. He went to George Knapp and he said, "Oh yeah, me and my wife were partners in this brothel." And by the way, according to George Knapp, it's on the same block you live on.
Oh.
And so George Knapp freaked out, like that the whole story was going to come crashing down because everybody would find out that Bob's running a brothel. And so I'm not sure. He said different things at different times. Either he called the police and told them about it, or he convinced Bob to turn himself in for running the brothel. And the interesting thing is that prostitution is legal in the state of Nevada. So they could have put it outside of Nevada and it would have been legal, but there's a lot of paperwork and things like that in the city limits.
County. I thought it was just only legal like in a certain county. Like it's not.
No, I think it's legal in many of the counties. Just it's not legal in the city limits of Las Vegas.
Oh, okay.
They just don't want that. Even though I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas, but all you see is
you can find one easily.
Oh, there's just trucks driving around with these big whores on like the side of the truck and phone numbers.
There's papers all over the ground.
Yeah, people are always handing you the
visit Vegas soon.
Yeah. I went with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, and I made a joke of it because we're walking up and down the strip and people were handing us those things constantly, and I kept asking my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, I'm like, come on, don't you want to get a whore tonight? This will be fun,
It's tradition.
Like, come on, let's go. It's Vegas. What stays in Vegas? What happens stays, and then, yeah. So, but we didn't do that. I did drag her into some wedding chapels, and she didn't like that very much. She was like, I'm not getting married in Vegas, you dummy. I'm like, all right, come on, we could have Elvis marry us. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that would be awesome. Now, with this current round of whistleblowers, we got in the last, I think it was 2 months, we'd seen the Stephen Greer disclosure stage show. I'm not sure what it's called, like the lecture.
Yeah.
And then we had the new, I always forget his name, Michael Grosh,
David Grush.
David Grush.
Yeah.
So what do you think about those guys?
Well, I think that Stephen Greer's event was a total nothing burger, and we did a whole story on it. It was interesting in that he had 4 or 5 guys that told stories, but none of them had any evidence. Instead, Michael Schratt, who sadly now works for Stephen Greer, made a lot of pretty pictures of their story, and so that was their so-called. That was all they had, was these guys telling stories and a bunch of drawings of what they claim they saw. And there's also a lot of problems because one guy named Eric Hecker, who we looked into, he was literally a plumber at the North Pole. And, nothing against plumbers. I have a lot of friends in the trades, carpenters and roofers. And, I grew up working class.
Sure,
so
yeah.
My dad was into that stuff too. But this guy, Eric Hecker, he goes to the North Pole as a plumber, and then he's claiming that he's seeing all kinds of mind control devices, devices that could create tsunamis and
he made
control
a claim
the
that
weather.
From looking at the circuitry, that he determined that this was like a mind control device.
Yes, and I said on my show, I'm a computer scientist and an electronics guy. I've built all kinds of stuff, robots, radios, all kinds of test equipment, and I couldn't look at a circuit and say, oh, that's a mind control device. Obviously. And I would be considered like a literal expert in electronics. So I'm wondering how a plumber can make that call when he's not an expert in electronics or educated in electronics. And he got, and the other indicator that he's full of it is that I started asking him questions, and he started being very personally insulting and saying all kinds, cursing at me in emails and stuff. And all I was asking him to do was to prove the claims that he made on his own website, because he always says all the proof's on my website. And the funny thing is, when you go to his website, it's all like documents that he downloaded from theblackvault.com that are very general about mind control devices or Project Stargate. He claims he was in Project Stargate as a child, so I sent him a list of all the Stargate participants. There's a list of everybody that was involved in that project. He's not on it.
So is that a real project? I mean,
yeah.
What's Stargate?
Wow.
Is that where they
Stargate was the psychic spy program run by the CIA and Stanford Research Institute, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, where they studied psychics. And interestingly, it was all a sham, I believe, because they determined, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, especially Hal Puthoff, I'm not so sure what Russell Targ determination was, but they studied Uri Geller, who literally later in his life admitted that he's just a magician who uses magic tricks. He did an International Brotherhood of Magicians worldwide conference where he was the speaker, and he admitted that it's entertainment, it's magic tricks. And then a lot of people don't know, but if you're a magician, you can pay like huge money to go to some of these things, and the magicians will get up and they'll show you their tricks. And Uri Geller did this. He was at an International Brother showing everybody how he bent the spoons, how he would make compass needles move. He did it with a little fake finger with a magnet in it. He showed all that stuff. Yes, but the interesting point when it comes to Stargate is that Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, declared that Uri Geller's psychic powers were genuine. And what he didn't know is he was getting fooled by like stupid magic tricks, So the government wasted. You could see that movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats. It's about the same thing. They wasted a huge amount of money on this psychic spy program. Eric Hecker claimed to be a part of it, but there's a list of everybody that was a participant. The Stargate was a remote viewing part of it. There was more to the programs because they were studying Uri Geller and different psychics and precognition and remote viewing. Stargate was the remote viewing portion of the program, and everybody who was one of the remote viewers or part of the program is on a list. And I have that list. So we went to Eric Hecker, and he had no explanation for why he wasn't on the list. And further, Russell Targ confirmed that there were no children involved in any of the programs at SRI. So he couldn't have been involved in Project Stargate as a child. That's just fake background to help sell his new fake stories. And by the way, this is just one of Greer's whistleblowers. A few of the others had a little more verifiable military credentials. But again, none of them had any evidence. They just had a story and pictures that somebody drew.
And that's been the common theme is there's no evidence. And I remember back on Coast to Coast AM having Stephen Greer on, and it was Disclosure 1999. And we have not, I don't feel like we've gone an inch since for 23, 24 years.
Same stories though, just different names now. And as far as so Stephen Greer's this so-called disclosure event, which by the way, there are people who I'm not going to name because I don't even want to acknowledge them, but there are people that work for Greer that helped him pump this thing for like 6 months. Oh, this is going to be such a historic event, this big disclosure event. He's got all these whistleblowers. They knew this whole time that the whistleblowers had no evidence. They shouldn't have been hyping it like they did, but they did, because they get a little bit of money from whatever. They have some financial motive.
And I believe the tickets were I think just a basic ticket. Was it like $350?
500.
Wow.
$500.
I met him in person. He was very full of himself. And, Gary Nolan, he knows he's like, he's bullshitting on behalf of Stephen Greer. Like he acts like he's a scientist. Like he is a scientist or whatever, but he confirms things for Greer.
I always say that Gary Nolan is in the business of selling the credibility of Stanford University and his own credibility to help UFO grifters sell fake stories. Because
is he the guy with the big ball bearing that he keeps getting tested?
Last September he said that he was going to do the testing on that. And I know for a fact because I worked in laboratories where we had a mass spectrometer. But I checked in just to be sure with somebody to do the test on those metal shavings to determine if they are earthly origin or not would take 20 minutes. We've been waiting since last September for him to do that. But I have a feeling that he got cold feet of using the university labs and equipment to do the testing as he promised in this mini documentary of Ross Coulthard, because I started digging and I found out that he's not allowed to use Stanford University labs and equipment for personal profit.
Oh, wow.
So, and I reported on that, and suddenly we're not getting any, we don't know what happened with the balls.
Yeah, I remember he was asking for an insane amount of money to test this thing. It was like, I think I want to say like in the hundreds.
Oh, no, that's what he came up with after our report, that he was not allowed to use Stanford University equipment and and supply, and personnel for personal profit. Suddenly he needs $30 million to start his own lab or something to test some ball that was exactly, 50 pounds. And it was built to the metric system. You know, like, and earthly measurements. Why would an alien even know our earthly measurements, first of all?
Very
and
valid
second
point.
of all, the guy it came from was just some burnt out acid old hippie guy that worked in the music business. Like, it's not a credible source. I would still like to see the analysis done, but you know, and remember too that the person that is currently selling the Dave Grush story is Ross Coulthart. Ross Coulthart, that was his story, and he claimed they had, quote, conclusive proof of alien technology, all confirmed by this renowned scientist. And then they cut to a shot of Michio Kaku. They didn't do the analysis. Michio Kaku didn't confirm anything. They didn't have any evidence, let alone conclusive proof of alien technology confirmed by Michio Kaku.
He's just another one you could pay to say anything that is true.
Yeah, and Michio Kaku, they paid him to be in the documentary, and he does what he always does. He talks about theoretical physics, wormholes, and how they might be able to get here from vast distances.
Like, he's not lying, but it's still...
yeah. I mean, but he didn't confirm.
He did a John Teeter documentary. He was like in it for like 30 minutes of it. He was in it a lot.
Yeah, well, you pay him, you give him a check, and he will do it. You know, I could hire Michio Kaku. I know who his agent is. We try to get an on-the-record comment from him about confirming the alien technology, but they pretty much told me that he didn't want to talk about it. Like, you know, it's interesting though that the person selling this Dave Grush story has provably been caught selling 100% fake stories before. We have to look at this Dave Grush guy through that lens to know, you know. And now the Dave Grush story is really starting to take an interesting turn, because now he's using Stephen Greer talking points like, oh, they're withholding this alien, you know, UFO technology from us. And one of those technologies is free energy. And if they just released that to us, we could get off oil and we could save the environment. And none of us would have to work because we'd all have free energy. This is a Stephen Greer talking point that he's been using for a decade, you know? So, and there's also the close association. Grush has, you know, connected to Stephen Greer. He's connected to George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, Lou Elizondo, Gary Nolan, and Ross Coulthart. Before he even came out as a whistleblower, he was connected to all these UFO grifters. So I don't think that his story is going to pan out. I think it's going to fall apart. But I always say this. I hope it doesn't. I hope we get proof of non-human technology, and I'll cream in my pants. I would love that. It would be awesome.
It'd be awesome. Yeah.
I'd love to.
It'd be the dream.
All of this. Yeah.
But that's why I was so disappointed when I found out about Bob Lazar. I really held close to that story. Like, this is the truth out there. Like, we have it. But I was glad that I accepted it. You know what I mean? I'm glad that I didn't like deny it and go.
But what about Stephen Walton? I'm curious. Do you think he's full of shit?
No, you know.
Fire in the Sky, the guy.
Oh, you mean Travis Walton?
Oh, Travis Walton.
Yeah, I think there's substantial indicators that Travis Walton is full of it, because he failed at least 2 lie detector tests. One of them on national television. There's a clip on YouTube. Lie detector
tests are fucking bullshit.
Well, it depends. I think that they're very accurate. In fact, Sheila, someday you're going to visit me, and I'm going to put you in my hot seat, because I have a lie detector.
Hell yeah!
And, I have been playing with it, and I think that it is very accurate.
What if you're on what if somebody's on drugs? How can you
Yeah, well, there are ways. There are a lot of ways that have been detailed. You can look that up on the YouTube on how to pass a lie detector, even if you're lying. So they can be fooled,
or
but
fail one if you're just telling the truth, but you're
a good polygraph examiner will take measures to ensure you can't use those methods. One of them is drugs. However, you could take a sedative, not to the point of like you falling asleep, but almost, and your heart rate and your sweating will be declined from your normal waking state, because you're so, you know, sort of depressed artificially with the sedative.
If it was on stimulants, wouldn't they be more nervous and sweaty?
Yeah, I guess they would. Yeah, I guess crackheads probably wouldn't do well on a polygraph. I don't know
what you'd ask them, though. I'm definitely pro hooking Sheila up to a lie detector.
Yeah, I'm doing. You know, I don't know how gross I'm going to get, but like I have this idea, because it's Truth Seekers, and I'm working on a new set and stuff here, where I'd like to have something called the hot seat, where people come in and then I hook them up. I hook them up to the lie detector, and then like my guy friends, I'm going to hook them all up and ask them if they ever sucked a dick, or if they ever done
Oh,
like,
yeah.
or stuff like that.
Yeah,
I thought it would be funny. It would be funny.
Mike's getting lie detected too then.
Yeah, or you can hook a woman up and ask her how many dudes she banged. Like it would be funny.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I lost count, so I'm just kidding. It's gonna
Leave it to Sheila. Leave it to Sheila.
Keeping it real.
I can't lie if I don't even know the number. So I'm just kidding.
Well, I was in the music business, so I verifiably lost count. Like I could never know.
Oh wow.
I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm on the East Coast now. We're both on the East Coast. So
Other guys did drugs. Other guys did drugs. I did new girlfriends.
That's probably a healthier choice. Keep you fit. Keep your cardio
It's a
up.
miracle. It was a miracle. I always thought it was a miracle that I got into the music business. I never caught an STD, not once, nothing.
Well, that's
I just
good.
kept it covered. Stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but Sheila, you're welcome. I'm gonna do a little more work to make sure that I'm accurate in reading it. I have to do some more tests, because
Awesome.
I don't want to bring people here and then it's just my opinion, like I want to be pretty sure.
You can fuck around with it anyway, and I'm sure there's other cool stuff around that cabin to like look at or whatever.
Well, I would be fascinated.
Well, I'm still at my house now. I'm waiting.
Well,
when we're finished the show tonight, I'm going up to the cabin and I'll be there until I think Tuesday. So that's awesome. I can't wait. Yeah, and I saw MK Ultra. You're into a lot of weird stuff that I like, so you should come visit.
Ever since my dad, I was sitting on his lap at like 5 years old, and my dad, we were watching some about the Apollo landings, and he said, some people think that that's a conspiracy, that they actually faked it and filmed it. And ever since he told me that, it set me on this course where like I've always suspected. I could never believe anything that I saw. It was like,
you never want to believe anything the government tells you, but I happen to know and have spoken to people who worked on the Apollo program, and I think that they did go there. But
I think so too. Yeah,
I think that there may have been some attempt to make like a fake tape to use in the event that they died on the way, just so that they could still tell the Soviets we landed on the moon first.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a big embarrassment not to make it to the moon.
Yeah, my current stance is that I do believe we went to the moon, but I think there are some photographs that were taken on a set somewhere or two. And
there is a lot of weird stuff. I admit there's a lot of weird stuff when you look at some of the stuff.
But they didn't go one time; they went like 7 times.
Yeah, and it's amazing we haven't been back since, but hopefully
I guess we're going now.
Soon.
It's a conspiracy, but we're supposed to go back by 2025. I think it is.
Well, I guess all those people who said we will never go back because we were warned off the moon by aliens were wrong. Then we'll see.
We'll see.
Which that never even like made sense in my brain. Like, are they in a spacesuit on the moon, and then an alien walks up to them in zero atmosphere, in a vacuum, basically, and then talk to them, or?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But there was that Apollo, I think it was Apollo 17 hoax with the girl alien, and that actually was very well done, because I talked to somebody that worked on the landers, and he said that whoever did that had intimate knowledge of the inside of the Apollo mission capsules, because it was very accurate what they showed in that hoax video. And he said it must have taken somebody months to build that thing painstakingly with pictures or something. All the buttons were in the right place. And a lot of things were
That's interesting.
Where they were supposed to be. So, yeah. But I'm pretty sure that, and then we have Linda Moulton Howe with like Apollo Moon Mission 20 and this and that. And, aliens on the moon, pictures on the moon that turned out to be a video game cover. It wasn't a picture.
That was ridiculous. That was so.
She can't check on anything. She can't reverse image search to save her life.
Yeah,
especially that image. That image is kind of iconic. Like I remember that game growing up. I used to play it at the arcade all the time. It's like as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Is that the picture she's talking about?"
These old people, they don't do any checking at all.
That and who's you see the lander in its eyes. Who's taking the picture in front of it? And you don't.
Yeah, the whole thing was so hokey. As soon as I saw that, I knew what it was because I played that game a lot.
Yeah.
Like I still had it. I have these huge shelves in my basement with old stuff and books, and I went and found it, and I couldn't believe it. Like I ran back to my computer. I took a picture of the video game. I'm like, bitch, you're charging people money for this. She was, and that's the thing. She was charging people to see more behind the paywall, so you had to pay $3. And then I did, just to see what she was showing, and it was like just more stories from the guy, but no more pictures.
Yeah,
But she
and there was
used that
another
to
set
get,
of alien photographs too that she's gotten from a guy who was a special effects guy who
in Brazil. Yeah.
yeah.
And that was interesting because we busted her for that one too. And then we actually found the artist, and then I interviewed him, and then we had to get the thing translated to English because he wasn't comfortable answering the questions. He spoke English a little, but he wanted to be very clear with what happened and how he made those photos. And so, and she still doubled down and claimed that the eyes weren't right with the 3D model or something. And
Wow.
And that's the thing, when a grift works, I noticed they'll do it again. So she did the grift with the first fake alien picture and probably made a big chunk of money. And so she waited a while and she did it again. And I'm told she did it a third time before I caught her with the video game cover.
Wow.
But I still am looking for the time she did it a third time,
That's the effect money has on people. Like, maybe nobody is like free from being susceptible to that. Who knows? We don't know. We never.
I always tell people everybody's got a price. Like, somebody puts a few $1 million in front of me, I'm making fake UFO videos. And I was a magician. I could do a monster of a UFO hoax if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Dang integrity.
Yeah, I gotta retire. I would just take the money and retire. That's what I would just disappear. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I call it the truth tax. Like, Sheila, you see it. All these people that talk about nonsense and fairy tales, that they'll have 5 times the viewers, which means 5 times the money of a show like mine, where we do it the straight, ethical, and moral way. Or, we try our best to.
And in the comments, everyone is like so sycophantic, like believing everything. Like, it's really
right. I know you talk about Wilcox a lot, and like that guy really does. It seems like almost like what's that?
It's Wilcock. It's Wilcock, not
Wilcock, not Cox.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, my bad.
It's a singular cock.
Okay,
not a double
apologies.
cock.
Apologies.
Yes, yeah. I find it just like at some point with David Wilcock, it just became like a form of entertainment for me to tune in and see what the hell he's going to say next. Because
I wish he'd stream every night.
I wish he would too, because believe it or not, like, I think his shows get more views than my really serious shows where I do all this research and really work hard on presenting a story or something. I could just play a stream of his and stop it and talk about how ridiculous what he's saying, and I get more views. So I want him to make more, but the latest has gotten so ridiculous. He's selling these books now that he claims are from the Archangel Michael, and Archangel Michael told him to take baths in his own piss so he could get superpowers, and it's just crazy. And then before that, he was telling stories about, like, he was sexually abused by reptilian aliens or something.
Wow.
And they made him a banana sandwich, whatever that means. I don't know.
It's amazing how there's so many people who they keep. Corey Good's another one. They keep stacking on stories, building off of what the original story was. It's like, well, why didn't you bring this up? Why didn't he bring it up? The reptilian sexual
lead with that probably.
You would think if you got butt banged by a reptilian alien, you would remember it too. And he kind of claims he's suddenly recovering memories of being butt banged by reptilian aliens or something. And then he was crying on stream, and I know for a fact, because I know somebody that worked with or for him, that and he should be very careful, because he's I'm told he's like cheap and he's nasty to people that work for him. And what happens is, when they no longer work for him, they find people like me and they start spilling the beans. So, he's an interesting character though. And it's just, to be honest with him, it's just like scam after scam after scam. I don't know how he hasn't faced some kind of consequences for it, but I think karmically he will. And maybe he is now, because I hear he's broke and desperate, trying to write another book so he can get, a few hundred people to give him $99 so he can survive in his $1 million mansion. That was the other bizarre thing. Like, you're an outdoors guy. Like, he claimed that he was struggling trying to make it through the winter in an uninsulated cabin. He's living in a cabin. He's
It's
living
not-
in a multi-million-dollar cabin
It's got beautiful
mansion.
drywall. It's got recessed lights. It's you
No,
can tell it's built like it's a newer house. Like it's a
Are you
nice
talking
house.
about David Wilcock?
Yeah.
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 And he was talking about how his internet goes out, but it's like you checked right, and he could get fiber optic internet if he wanted.
Yeah, I checked, and he could get high-speed internet right to his door. It's right out. It's like right out at the end of his driveway on the telephone poles. There's fiber optic high-speed internet.
Like
So
he's living in the woods, like in a
yeah, he tried to, and see, that's where things get deceptive. And to me, it's a form of consumer fraud, because he's basically like, oh, I'm really trying hard to survive through the winter in this uninsulated cabin. And, come on, dude, you're living in a multi-million-dollar mansion.
Yeah.
That just happens to have a cabin theme. That's not accurate. Like, oh, poor me, you're having trouble surviving in a multi-million-dollar log cabin. And by the way, log cabins, some of them don't have insulation, but if you see his cabin, they're using like 3-foot thick logs to make the walls. You don't need insulation if you've got 3-foot thick logs stacked up.
I guarantee you, he's got central heat and air. I guarantee you, he's got.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
all of it.
He might be paying alimony, right, to his ex-wife.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that he's going to pay her big, because,
Good.
if he doesn't just make her happy, she knows a lot that could destroy him.
Yeah,
about everything that he's been involved in.
Probably
and there's various reports that she, from those court depositions, that she left because she didn't want David Wilcock working with Corey Good, and he kept choosing to do that. So his wife had enough after a while. But I think I also heard that she was pissed off because he gave all their money to that scammy aerospace company.
For the flying car thing?
Yeah, and they've never even made an airplane. Somehow they're going to make a flying car. Yeah.
Which, does anybody want a flying car? What's exactly the huge benefit?
I think that sounds terrifying. I don't want people to be doing that.
It's like we already bought the roads.
I would want a flying car if I could have one. That would be kind of awesome.
I mean, if the option's on the table, sure.
Actually, I would want other people to have one. I wouldn't mind.
But he talked about this, and it's so bizarre, because he's like, oh yeah, these Salvador Pius patents, we're going to take that technology and make a commercial hover car, and you'll have one within 2 years or something, he said. And the thing is, that's crazy, is like, you can't just take somebody's patented technology and make a product out of it. That's the point of a patent. They own that. Even if the technology is workable, and I don't believe that it is. If it worked, somebody would have built a scale model of the so-called technology described in the patent and show that it works. Nobody's done that yet.
Well, like a realistic timeline, if you had some sort of like propulsion system that would work like that, a realistic timeline would still be 10 years. You'd have to build scale models, test it out. How do you stop?
No, according to him, he's just going to 3D print. He's just going to 3D print hover cars in 2 years. Yeah,
sure.
Wow. But I think it's somewhat like karmic justice, because he made millions of dollars scamming people with fake information, and it appears that he may have got scammed by a scammy aerospace company out of a few $1 million. So maybe that's just karma's way of equaling out. Like, hey, all that money you got in the bank that you made scamming people? Now you're going to get scammed, and we'll equalize things a little bit.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Well, coming up on an hour, and I guess we kind of. Oh, wait, what's that, Sergio?
I was saying that's the best you can hope for to happen. He can't go to jail for it. Yeah.
I'd rather someone like that be broke and just having to scrounge and do what they have to.
Yep, for sure.
Because he could have walked away multiple times with a little bit.
Yeah, all I know is that karma, has its way. I grew up in a pretty rough area, and there was a lot of criminals around, and they were always flashy, big wads of money and gold and designer clothes and brand new cars and stuff. But then a short time later, you see the cops breaking their door down, and you don't see them again. So karma, you can't get ahead by being a scumball.
I would say one of the big
shady things. It might work short term, but it doesn't work long term.
Yeah, one of the things that when she first introduced me to your channel, I was kind of going through where's a good place to start, and I went with the Corey Good deposition commentary, and that that was incredible to watch someone having to be
Yeah,
forced
that was
to
one of
sit
my
on oath.
favorite pieces. Yeah,
And it was a great introduction to you too, because you got to break down the behind the like, I guess, the narrative that was
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Obviously,
And the
the real
most
thing.
interesting, the most interesting part of those depositions to me was that Corey Good believed that nobody would ever see or hear them. His
Yeah.
lawyer screwed up and thought that she could just mark all the deposition
Yeah.
as confidential.
He's
That's
like, it's
not
all
how it works.
confidential. It's
Yeah,
all-
that's what she said in the beginning.
Yeah.
This is all confidential.
Who's that
And
guy? Is that guy recording?
the lawyer for the defense, his name is Mr. Webb, cool guy. He played it great. He was like, if you want to say that, okay, whatever. He didn't tell her right then and there. It's not his job to tell her you can't do that. So he just let her do that, and then he knew that these are not confidential. Like and then we had to make a judgment call. I had them like for a while before anybody even knew they existed, and I was like, I don't know about publishing these. Look, I have the right shirt on for it. Don't sue me, bro.
Yeah,
don't sue me, bro.
Disclaimer.
Like, yeah, because the guy likes to sue people, and he did threaten me, and they lied to me. They sent me a letter saying that I was in violation of a court order because these depositions are confidential and I have no legal right to broadcast them and take them down immediately, preserve all your documents. I really think that they were going to try to subpoena my email and my phone records and try to figure out who leaked them to me. But luckily, I live in the state of Pennsylvania and there's a very strong journalist shield law. So I wouldn't release who leaked them to me even under subpoena. I don't have to, according to this journalist shield law. So I researched, found that. I talked to a lawyer that I trust who researched that journalist shield law and says, you don't have to give them anything, Stephen. You don't have to preserve anything. You don't have to release anything to them. Even if a judge orders you to, you don't have to in the state of Pennsylvania. And judges know this, so they would not allow somebody to try to force you because they know that you don't have to in my state. So luckily that law exists to protect journalists. And I just said, I'm leaving them up and I'm not taking anything down and you do what you're going to do. I haven't heard anything else from his lawyer. So I'm assuming they realized, number one, we lied in a legal threat letter to this person. And number two, he has legal protection where he doesn't have to release anything to us or any judge about his sources, because it was very clear in the letter that they were going to try to fish to find out who gave me the depositions. But to this day, I haven't. I kept my word to the person that I got them from that I would never reveal my sources. You can't do that, because if you get a reputation for burning a source because the heat's on or things get a little hot for you or somebody threatens you, you won't have sources after that. I've got people in the military, I've got people in government that are sources of mine. If they heard that I did that, they wouldn't speak to me ever again because they'd be worried that I would out them, And sometimes the best sources are those ones that they're not going to go on the record for you, but they'll confirm things for you so that you know that your story is correct. I call them background sources. These are very important. Maybe I have somebody that did tell me something on the record, but I need clarification or verification that this information is entirely accurate. So I go to those other sources and it works out.
Yep.
Well, I'm very thankful you stand firm on that. Like, I'm glad you don't bend it to this.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time we just rebroadcast this fake psychic girl's shows because she threatened me to take the videos down. At the time I was extremely busy, and I started looking into the lawyer and the law, the threats she made to sue me for slander and this and that. And then I found out that the lawyer that she had sent me a letter wasn't a real lawyer. So then I said, oh, well, this is bull. I'm going to put them back. But then I kind of forgot about it. I got so busy that I forgot to put them back. So we'll put them all back. And, because I also think that if word gets around that all somebody has to do is threaten you to take the videos down, and you won't have a show after a while, especially not with what we do, covering all these scammers, grifters, fake psychics.
But she also tried to bribe you when you wouldn't take it down.
Yes, she tried to bribe me too.
$5,000.
Yeah, she offered me some deal where I would work for her doing, like production work or something like that. And I didn't even think about it for a moment. I knew right away what she was trying to do. And others have tried to do that to me. Some scammy fake UFO channel offered me some deal where, I would get a piece of YouTube ad revenue for working with them. And I turned that down as well, because you got to be objective. And obviously, if somebody's paying me, they're going to be my buddy, right? You give me some big money, I'm not going to say anything bad about you, and they know that, so they do try to buy people occasionally.
Earth Face of Moon tried to. They wanted me to be a regular guest on their show. Like
I was trying not to. I was trying not to name them, but they try to buy.
Okay.
Try to buy me too. And the thing is that I said to them, I'm like, it's okay if you think I'm a whore, but I'm not a cheap one. Like, you're not going to buy me off for YouTube ad pennies. What am I going to do? Chase you for the rest of my life for my 14 cents for that month? Like, no.
Who did take them up on the offer?
Yeah. Okay. Goofy.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. The guy who lies to his audience constantly. It's awesome. Yeah. Oh, and recently that clown said that I bought subscribers or something.
I was watching when he said that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll pass a polygraph if he wants to pay for one.
He said you bought subscribers, and then he said he went right into telling exactly which websites to buy subscribers from.
Yeah, he knows all about it, right? And by the way, we can look at the analytics.
Was his account logged in when he went to the website?
He said he looked all into it. In the next breath, he talked about how he's totally looked into it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that we can look at the analytics on Social Blade and see that he has gotten, he's gotten thousands in 1 week. After 6 months of not one subscriber, suddenly he's gotten thousands.
Yeah, oftentimes they kind of spread it out over a few days.
Yeah, so like
solid.
You could see in my analytics that it's been slow, steady growth. We get between 2 or 3 or 500 subscribers. And then he's so stupid that he doesn't realize, basically how this works. He'll say, oh, he got a big chunk of subscribers just recently. He must have bought them. No, we had a really huge story. That's why we got a bigger chunk of subscribers that month than we usually do, because we had a huge story. And it's always these bigger exclusive stories, like the Corey Good depositions. We had them all. Nobody else had all of them.
Yeah.
A lot of people had that one that was the most damaging, but nobody had all of them. So, of course, people were interested in that story, and we had the exclusive on it. So, of course, we're going to get more subscribers that month than we usually do.
Yeah.
Because so many more people are tuning in and finding us to get that information that only we have. So, he doesn't understand how things work. And he also said, I'm buying subscribers to try to catch up to him, but I don't understand how I'm trying to catch up to somebody that's doing worse than me. Well, what am I catching up to? And he's so stupid that he doesn't realize that I'm on all these platforms that he's not even on. We've got 10 to 20,000 downloads just on the audio podcast that he's not getting. I'm not catching up to you. You're doing worse than me. Why would I buy subscribers to try to beat somebody that, it's just ridiculous.
And that's something that is, I guess it's kind of true. If you do buy subscribers, you get kind of shadow banned from YouTube. Like if you type your name in the search engine, it's not going to come up, but yours still comes up. Your channel still comes up just fine on autocomplete and everything. So
I would think there'd be some sort of algorithm that would watch for that type of suspicious growth.
Yeah, I mean, I managed people's social media for a long time. I always joke about this. Like for a while, there were some people in the music business that were pretty well known that I was like doing a lot of their social media work and website work and things like that. And that a lot of those guys wanted me to buy them views and buy them subscribe. And I'm like, I would have to twist their arm to talk them out of it. Like, listen, I can go get you 1 million subscribers if you want to pay for them, but none of those 1 million subscribers are going to buy your album on iTunes. So it's not going to help you. It's just going to be for your ego. It's not going to do anything for you, Or like they would put out a new music video that would do poorly organically, and they would want me to pump up the views by buying views. And I would say the same thing. Like, I could go get you 1 million views if you want to pay, but none of those people are going to buy your album. So is this just ego?
Being a social media manager, my friend is one. It's that's how it is. Like the person's content sucks. you don't want to tell them that, but they're paying you to make it get better numbers and stuff. It's just like your content sucks, dude.
Well, I generally don't do that anymore. I do still, like, for people who ask me, I try to pay it forward, like, because I'm pretty knowledgeable about some of this stuff. Like, I just looked at another show host's YouTube channel and told them how to fix a lot of the, they had all these problems. They do a live show and you go to their channel and they had videos at the top and no tab for live shows. So their numbers were poor because people aren't even seeing the live shows. And it's so stupid. Like, all you have to do is click, the person said, well, you just have to click on the live tab. And I go, but people don't do that. People aren't clicking on the live tab. Yeah. Put the live shows right at the top. And, we looked at what they were doing wrong and we fixed it. I still help people out, but I will probably not be doing any social media except for maybe small businesses, because that's profitable. Some small businesses just want to have a small social media presence, and it's a profitable thing to go take some pictures for them and put them up on Facebook for them and write them an invoice. They don't want to deal with it, but individuals,
I definitely need to optimize my channels. Admittedly, they're like.
Yeah, well, every little bit of things help, and I'm no expert. In fact, I think a lot of what I do is outdated because I hashtag like crazy, and somebody that I know and really respect and as knowledgeable told me, oh, that doesn't work as well as it used to, Steven. Just do one hashtag. I'm doing like 12, like hashtag live show tonight, but it does still kind of work.
They want you to do shorts is what they want.
I've never been able to
shorts. I can't do it. I tried. I started messing around with it, and like, how do I break down what I do, which is long form, research and investigation into stories into 1 minute chunks. It's just,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, all my nieces and nephews love TikTok, but I think that really, I hate to say I'm getting older or something, but like, that's just not for me. That's for like,
you need a really snappy editor to like
teenagers. Yeah. Like,
it's like a forced medium they're trying to put you into. Like, we're trying to, hey, take 15 seconds out of something great and show it. It's like, but nothing I do, it breaks down to 15 seconds. There might be a moment like the Porta-John, the Stephen Greer Porta-John stuff.
I'm fine with short videos. Like, I think some of my better videos that I've made are those ones that are like 10-minute or 5-minute videos. But that's a short.
Like, sum it up in 15 seconds is like, I can't do it. I can't.
No.
Well, I think the limit for shorts is like 1 minute, but still, like, how do you even tell a story in 1 minute?
True that.
Yeah.
That's very difficult.
I guess lip syncing and dancing is what you're forced to do.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I know you got a little bit of a hard out. We're already at an hour 17. I guess, what's your final thoughts on that David Grush, or I'm never going to Grush.
Yeah. I always remember it because I say Grush Rush. There was
Grush
been
Rush.
a rush.
Oh, I'm going to do that. That's a good idea.
A rush. Everybody is rushing to Grush. We have a rush by believers to verify that he's really telling the truth, and we were right about all this. I think, my thoughts on him is that it's incredibly suspicious that he was connected to all these known longtime UFO grifters before he even said a word. And it appears that he is pushing verifiably fake information in the form of this Nazi, or I'm sorry, Italian. I had to clear my throat. There was a allegedly, there was a UFO crash in the 1930s in Italy, but the only evidence of that were some leaked documents from a so-called archive that doesn't actually exist, that were leaked anonymously to some UFO guys in Italy. And even the original investigator on the case pretty much determined that the documents were fake. So he's pushing.
And when did that story come out? The Italian?
More than 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why would, and Grush said that the United States government briefed him. Somebody in the United States government briefed him on this Italian UFO case. And I'm thinking, why would anybody in the United States government brief him on a fake UFO story that was busted as a hoax 20 plus years ago? But I think that information came from Lou Elizondo, because not long ago, Lou Elizondo went to Italy and met all the Italian UFO guys, and suddenly, and he's already connected to Grush. Brian Bender said that Lou Elizondo has been grooming him for quite a while. So it stands to reason that that story might have come from Lou Elizondo, who has been known to show documents and not do proper research and say, oh, this is a recently declassified document. No, it wasn't. It was declassified 30 years ago or whatever. He went on national television with a fake, with a document that wasn't what he claimed it was,
Yeah.
So, and I think that some of these guys that jump into the UFO grift game, they don't know that you have to double and triple check, especially documents, We have people push that NRO document that Stephen Greer, all the Wilson documents are based on. John from the Black Vault ripped it apart as a completely and totally fake document. People pushed that for years before anybody actually determined that the document was fake. And it was laughable. There were so many reasons why that couldn't have been a real document. And John's a real expert on government documents. And there's a lot of weird stuff with government documents, certain formats and formatting, the way the date is written, some, like there's all this weird stuff. Like, the Army will read a date, like the month first, then the day, then the year. The Air Force does it the opposite way. And there's all of these weird tells that you can use to do some document examination. But I think that Grush has been fed, I'm just speculating now, but from what I've gathered, I think that Grush has spent some time and with all of these, I call them like the TTSA grifter gang, all the guys that brought us TTSA, Lou Elizondo, Gary Nolan, Eric Davis knows this guy Grush. I think they've all fed him information over the course of a certain period of time. And, they propped him up. Go be a hero. Go tell everybody we have aliens, And if that's the case, and it's also recently been determined that or revealed that he's autistic, and there's scientific studies that autistic people don't discern lies from truth as well as a non-affected person without autism, and that they're easier to manipulate. And if that's the case, that they manipulated some poor autistic guy into doing this,
That's messed up.
and
definitely messed up. That's definitely
So there's a few possibilities here. There's three really. Either this guy is on the level and he really does have these other people that were direct firsthand witnesses to this technology, saw it, worked on it, whatever. And he's retelling the stories that he was told, and he's going to divulge those people's names and the locations. And that's one possibility. And the second possibility is that he was manipulated into this. He's been fed information, a steady diet of the aliens are here from believers like Eric Davis and Gary Nolan and Lou Elizondo. And he was manipulated into this situation. If that's the case, it's terrible because the guy blew his whole career to do this. If it all turns out that he was fed fake shit, and it seems like so far he was definitely fed at least one, his prover is, well, there's definitely crash retrievals. There was one in Italy in the 1930s. No, that one was fake. Why would you bring that up?
Yeah.
Now everyone's running with the he turned in documents and the government or somebody said that they were
convenient
credible.
that nobody can see them. I have all this proof, but nobody can see it.
Yeah.
If you were a real whistleblower, you would just drop them whether they were classified or not, and say, "Here, bitches, there's the aliens,"
Yeah, like
and here's the
Snowden.
documents to prove it. Yeah, like Snowden. And then that's the other thing. Everybody's throwing around this whistleblower term. Whistleblowers have evidence. They don't have just stories. What if Snowden just came to us and said, "This is what's going on," and he had not a single shred of evidence? Nobody would believe a word he said.
That's not a whistleblower. That's just the
There's a difference between a whistleblower and a storyteller. Dave Grush is a storyteller until proven otherwise. He's just repeating stories he's heard.
Are there any real ufology whistleblowers that have ever existed?
I think that it depends on the terminology and the definition. There's certainly been some people that were high ranking that claimed that they were blowing the whistle, but most of them, we did a not so brief history of UFO whistleblowers, and we've got Bob Lazar, Phil Corso, Clifford Stone,
The stories, though, that
Pete Peterson. Yeah. And, You can call them whistleblowers, and they did come out and tell stories, but none of them have ever proven their claims, and that's the important part to me.
That's not a real whistleblower either.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know, to me, a whistleblower would be if a guy came out that had, let's say, inter communication email between these third-party contractors that are working on alien technology, and they clearly say in the emails, like, you know, metal analysis determines that the metals creating this craft are of non-human origin. If he had stuff like that, or, you know, some kind of smoking gun, like, you can look at that and say, you know, and then you can interview the people that sent the emails and grill them about it, you know, things that will be hard. And the other possibility is that there actually does exist crash retrieval programs for the United States government. If a Russian satellite or Chinese drone falls out of the sky, we go get it and we rip it apart and see what their technology is like. It could very well be that during one of these routine recoveries of foreign technology, foreign adversarial technology, we got a hold of something with, let's just say, exotic properties.
Yeah.
You know, there's all these new advances going on. Look up graphene and what they're doing with graphene right now.
Yeah.
Or 3D printed metal technology. You can 3D print stuff in metal now. And you know how they always say it looked like it was printed on a lattice. Well, that could be 3D metal printing that we're just, you know, so I think that this also could be a case of confusion. Somebody got a hold of some weird material. They didn't know what it was. They were convinced it was aliens. They start talking to other people that they work with, including Grush, and Grush gets a whiff of this and just becomes convinced that the government has alien technology when it's really kind of like a game of telephone as a child. You know, the story changes from person to person. And so I want this thing to be over with, though. Like, I want an answer. If this guy's full of it, I want to know tomorrow. I don't want to wait 5 years like we did with Lou Elizondo to find out that he lied about the government, everything that he said, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, we want to just come to a conclusion. So I'm kind of happy if they do, if they do the full court investigation and have everybody testify before Congress, then great. Let's get it all out there. And if you've got evidence, put up or shut up. Like, no more stories. We want the evidence now. Yeah. Because I have a feeling even if they do Senate hearings, they're going to bring a bunch of people before Congress who will tell stories but have no evidence, just like this guy. That's not helpful to getting to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
You know?
Basically using the government as a promotion for documentaries, lectures, and whatever else they ever want to sell forever. But because they love saying, oh, we spoke to Congress about this.
Oh, and that's another thing. Grush had a documentary deal as early as May 15th before he came out. He already had a documentary deal.
You broke the story of him meeting with the Canadian Parliament. I believe it was.
Yeah, we were the only people that had that story. And we know that story is true. And the reason that we know that story is true is because if that story wasn't true, the TTSA grifter squad and everybody else would have destroyed me. We know that story is true. I had multiple. I was very nervous about that. I got plenty of sourcing to confirm that they were, Nolan and Grush were there in person, and Ross Coulthart was on the phone during the meeting. And, that story is 100% true. So, it turns out this guy's already got a documentary deal before he said word one in the public. That's so very suspicious. Yeah.
Especially when he's supposedly talking about classified information. If you got classified information, you're going to get in trouble. Like, you can't just you can't make a documentary about it. Then
you should. So to me, there's too many red flags. Ross Coulthart, who sold a bunch of or several at least completely fake stories, is involved. Leslie Kane and Blumenthal, who brought us the whole Lou Elizondo lie. That article they wrote about Lou Elizondo was completely and totally factually wrong. It was just totally incorrect. And Lou Elizondo was the primary source of that. So either Lou lied to them or they invented some of that. These are all people. We've been here before. It's all the same people, one new face. So, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on, or whatever. I hate that saying. I always get it wrong. Like
fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
I can't be shamed again.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yes.
Yeah, Totally, yeah.
So I think, though, that, the other thing is, what we also have to remember from a psychological perspective, and this is very important, is that previous to this Grush story, the UFO community was getting hammered with things coming out that were fake, like the Trinity UFO crash. Jacques Vallée wrote a whole book, and that whole story came crashing down. Then we had the Go Fast, which we were told forever, well, that thing is booking, it's doing,
to 30,000 miles an hour.
Whatever. It turns out doing 40 miles an hour. There was all these hits that
and Las
came.
Vegas happened, right?
Yeah, but my point is that before Grush, there was all these hits that would lead most rational people to think, you know what, a lot of this stuff is just fake. It has to be, because look at all these stories that we're now learning were fake stories. And then Grush comes along and everybody is excited and engaged again. So
definitely the big talking point I kept hearing was about aliens that have killed people. But then I heard that that's not really what the quote is, that there was a real threat against, or that they were taking lives.
And this may be just the same old stories that we've heard. There's stories of human mutilations, just like cow mutilations, that people attribute to aliens. Is that what they're talking about? Unproven? These are unproven theories. What are they talking about?
As we talked about earlier, it's the lies of omission. That's what is the details in here that we're going to find out later on.
Yeah, and one thing that I've learned is that I'm very big on carefully examining the language when they put a story in writing, because that's usually a giveaway. The way they say certain things, they massage all the data of the story, and what they do is they construct an artificial reality of a true story. But when you peel back these layers of deception that they use to put these stories together, it starts falling apart.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, we're at 90 minutes. I know you said you had a little bit of an out, right? Or are you still good for a little bit?
Yeah, for a little bit, sure, yeah.
Okay, we'll keep going then.
And
I'll wait for Sheila. I think did you have something?
I was gonna say I'm still jet lagged and I kind of need to go to bed soon.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah. We should wrap it up. Sheila's gonna, and I just wanted to mention to my live chat. There was a few super chats and that kind of stuff. I
can pop.
No, there wasn't many of them. Well, I'm in my. Oh no, that's your chat. I was looking at. Am I on my chat?
We've had
I'm confused. Oh no, I'm on my channel
too.
Yeah, we want to just thank Sonny Biatch 1111 who became a channel member, and I think there's only one super chat here. Nemesis Bex, great show tonight. Praise the cash.
Sandra McDonald.
Are you sure those aren't your super chats though?
I don't know.
We're not monetized unless.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So put them up on the screen for me. And I just want to thank everybody.
Yeah.
Great show tonight. Praise the cash. That's weird. How are you getting those?
Our chats are like connected.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's because we're simulcasting. You're simulcasting. So like all of our chats are connected. Looks like we've had like 130 people in chat. But I don't know if that's a combined. But the whole.
I was trying not to look at it because it was giving me anxiety. That would be the most that I've ever most people I've ever talked to.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to mention to thank everybody for the super chats and for becoming a member. And I will read them again. Would the pretty lady like a big house pet? Asked Brian Kings.
What's the big house pet?
He said, "Would the pretty lady like a big house pet?"
That's an awesome avatar too. I mean,
I don't know.
Well, I just want to thank you all for the super chats. And if we missed any, I'll read them on the very next live show. Thank you all for the support. This has been an interesting experiment, so we'll try to do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more because this has been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a weird thing for me too. Like I feel like I'm doing a show, but not really, because it's your show, but it's on my show too, and this is weird.
Yeah,
but it's fun. Yeah.
Where's the line at?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just for future reference, so that you know, if you do that, share to my channel, it'll only let you use 2 slots.
Oh, Sheila, that might be.
Yeah. So. Well, what it means is that, you normally broadcast to a lot more than 2. But when you do this, they only let you go to 2. So I put this on Rumble and
so
YouTube.
You can't multi-stream as much as you normally would.
Yeah, normally I could be in a bunch of more places, Twitch and Facebook and Twitter. Oh, it's okay. I'll put them on those after the show sometime this weekend.
And hopefully that'll be an upgrade that we're adding on soon.
And I want to tell my audience that I'm going to the cabin, but I'm going to do a show from the cabin sometime. I don't know when, but I'll figure it out.
I'm looking forward to the Bigfoot.
Well, we're your viewers.
I'm looking forward to a Bigfoot episode.
Yeah,
Bigfoot's my thing, and I can't wait.
Oh, I have an 8-foot tall Bigfoot costume. It's awesome. It's got leg and arm extensions and everything. Someday I'm gonna fix it. It's kind of something. It needs some attention before it'll be useful again. But yeah, I took it to the cabin, and my wife is like, "Are you crazy? You're gonna get shot walking around in the woods in that, you dummy!" And then I knew that it needed some work, so I brought it home here. Maybe it'll be on our new set if I can fit it in there.
That it's 8 feet tall. It's a lot. So it's like
I would get some like football pads to fill it out.
It has all kinds of that. There's an undersuit. It's a really good. I think it's almost movie quality Sasquatch costume.
Oh wow!
You know. I never got the jaw to move though. I wanted to do that to just do screams, to just walk around in it and scream at people.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So I'll be doing a new show from the cabin sometime this weekend. And thanks to my audience and everybody for coming, and Patreon supporters and channel members and all that stuff. We appreciate you. I've done my due diligence for the week, but we'll do one more show before the week is out. And I'll announce it on my Twitter. It's at Stephen Cambian.
Sweet.
So thank you guys, and best of luck with your new show.
Thanks for coming on.
I'm kind of pissed off at you though, MK Ultra, because Sheila could have said, "Hey, I'll come and co-host Truth Seekers," and I would have said, "Fuck yeah, you will." But instead, she's doing a show with you. So
I can send her up there to do the lie detector show with her.
Yeah,
I would enjoy watching that.
Yeah, you give me some of the questions too.
I'll definitely write a few down.
Oh, this is going to be bad. We're like, how many times have you done Ask the Mouse, Sheila? Come on.
Both me and Sheila, we thought it was very important to get you on as early as we could, because we didn't want to be a show that was feeding into the BS.
That's good. Yeah,
and
we don't
start things off from the right perspective. You know, I just kind of think that facts matter, and unfortunately, a lot of people just live in this delusional fairy tale world because nobody ever pulls back those layers of deception for them and says, like, here's the rest of the story. Listen to this before you so quickly believe in this.
If one person who watched this, it was like me and believed Bob Lazar or any of these, I hope they are at least thinking about it not being. You know, if that's
and everybody should learn that you can't take any of these people at their words. You have to fact check everything they say. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. We'll do it again sometime.
Definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks very much for for your time and everything.
Thank you, everybody in chat.
My pleasure, guys, and thanks for everybody, for all three audiences. This was fun.
That's wild. All right. Do I have to drop people down, or this is where I ask stupid tech questions?
I think,
yes. Yeah. You have to drop me down, or I can just de-res myself. So
I'll drop you down. Oh,
bye.
Bye. Sorry.
He's waving at us.
He's good. Everybody, he's safe. Everybody.
Yeah, he's all right. He survived that.
I didn't think it was gonna be. I wasn't going to, but then my fingers slipped.
We're learning as we go.
I'm gonna get another nasty email from the. I'll get 2 guests in a row. Give me an email.
Oh no. He's like, that was horrible.
No. It was a horrible experience. Oh god, I feel bad now.
Well, he's awesome. He's not one who offends easily, as you could tell.
No, that was phenomenal. Hope and to all of Truth Seekers audience, this is great. It was really nice.
We're his biggest fans, so like we watch all of his stuff. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. When you sent me his channel to check out, I was immediately captivated by it because it was different, and then it was telling me stuff that I never knew. I was. Now, the Corey Good stuff I always knew was kind of nonsense because it's the.
Yeah, he's definitely like he exposed Linda Moulton Howe. That was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think that was kind of part of it too. I was looking into cattle mutilations in England, and the English investigator kind of was he was like despair. He was he didn't particularly care for Linda Moulton Howe, so I went down that rabbit hole. I'm like, oh, is she not genuine, and then I found out, oh no, she's not very
No,
genuine at all.
she may have started off that way, but she's not anymore.
Yeah, at least later now she's not a. The reason what he was talking about was the human mutilation. What you call it, like, but the human mutilation phenomenon.
I didn't know there was one.
She like flat out denies it and makes a lot of weird excuses about it. But yeah, that long road came to where I met Steve, or I started watching Steve Cambian, and it was awesome to have him on.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna go to bed with my kitty cat on the bed right there.
Okay. Hey, thanks everybody.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for coming out. See you soon. We'll announce when the next show is. Who's the next? Do we know who the next guest is?
David H. Altman, who's a Hollywood kind of guy. He's produced and starred in like that. One of the documentaries he did was called "A Tear in the Sky." It's from 2022. It's got William Shatner in it, and it's about UFOs and stuff. He's in that one. David H. Altman. So, and he's like best friends with Corey Feldman. If that's kind of random, but
woo, hey folks, Corey Feldman. You may remember him from Goonies and
exposing Hollywood pedophiles and stuff.
Yeah.
He's gonna be on. Oh God, when did we say Sunday?
Yes.
What time? I think it was 7 p.m.
Sunday at a time. We will have David Altman.
Sunday in the evening, Eastern.
Sunday in the evening at time.
Yeah.
We will have David Altman on.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
But this was a fun show, and I got a kick out of that. That was great. I hope people learned some stuff who maybe is new to Steven. I know the majority of it was his audience. Yeah, and it was great to see you guys.
The link to that is in the description, by the way. The link to Steven's Truth Seekers channel.
Oh, did we have a cool outro? I know you're putting something together.
No.
We'll have it ready. Maybe we'll have it ready Sunday.
Yeah, I was just busy traveling for the last day or so, but yeah, I will get that together for Sunday.
All right, everybody. Have a great night. Be safe. Eat healthy. Do a little walking.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah. May the force be with you.
Okay, good night.
Later.